Good morning. Today, it's my pleasure to open one of the side events for the annual Riga Conference 2021, together with the professor Sten Rynning, who is working at the Department of War Studies, Department of Political Science at the University of Southern Denmark, who is also a senior fellow of Danish Institute for Advanced Studies. Good morning, Sten.
Good morning.
Today we have the possibility to discuss a couple of important challenges that are relating to the transatlantic relations. And this conference, the Riga conference, has primarily questioned the security situation around the Baltic states, Baltic Sea region in Europe, and also the transatlantic relations. And there are a couple of factors that are pulling and holding the transatlantic relationships. After the election of President Biden, we were all expecting this relationship would be closer. But a couple of years in his presidency, we are debating a couple of substantial challenges for all of us, for Europeans and for Americans. And one of those challenges that has brought us together actually was Afghanistan and ISAF mission there. Today we are debating multiple challenges with Afghanistan since the United States had announced its willingness to depart from Afghanistan. And it was not just President Biden. Before him, Donald Trump, before him, President Obama, and before him, even Bush Jr., the president who actually started this campaign by leading the allies to Afghanistan. Sten, would you be so kind as to elaborate this situation a little bit, the state of the events, and how does it look from your perspective, from Danish perspective, from Northern European perspective? What are the challenges that this departure from Afghanistan has delivered to us in Europe, especially?
I think first of all we have to be frank about what happened, and it was a defeat, and it was a failure of our policy, and we had not planned to leave, and we had not planned to leave with the government falling, and so it speaks to our limits in conducting big crisis management, nation-building missions, in spite of us having invested 20 years and a very large number of resources, men and women servicing, and financial resources, and we need to contemplate what happened, and the EU is elaborating a strategic compass. NATO is now elaborating a new strategic concept, and so I think these are occasions where we owe it to ourselves to think about the implications of this failure. I think we will not be leaving Afghanistan. We tend to think that we will. Traumatizing as it was, now we're in a new era. We're looking at China and sort of the big pivot and the Indo-Pacific. I think so. That's another reason for contemplating what went wrong in Afghanistan. Is I think we'll be back, and before we know it. And it's certainly from a European perspective, because if, as I consider likely, if a degree of civil war breaks out in Afghanistan, we will have refugee flows, and we will have a very large drug economy impacting on us, and that will be of our concern, and we need to anticipate that we will have to deal with that. And then possibly there will also be terrorism coming out of Afghanistan. And I think this speaks to one of the other issues that you mentioned, namely the nature of the transatlantic relationship. Now that we have President Biden, we had a brief honeymoon with Biden coming in and saying America is back, and what unites us are our values and our shared commitment to democracy. And so that was a good moment. But what we have seen since then is that it has become very quickly, we're back to normal. It's difficult. It's difficult to translate this high moment of value sharing into daily practice. And Afghanistan will affect Europe in a different way than the United States. And this feeds into the debate on what does it mean to have European autonomy or European sovereignty. And I think this is one of the issues we need to work more stringently on, because we cannot say that it's contrary to the transatlantic relationship, and so try to close the debate, because Europe will need to deal with refugee flows and the drug economy as it impacts Europe. And so getting the European autonomy debate down to a level where we can manage it, so that it doesn't become the EU versus the US, that will be very detrimental to us, be it in Europe or in North America. So we need to, again, as a lessons from Afghanistan, be more practical about how we can maintain a degree of division of labor and yet be partners. And I think this is what we have to look out for in the coming year.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of really good points. There is strategic compass for Europe. So Europe is always looking for direction, a little bit lost. Mm-hmm. Then the United States and NATO also works on a strategic concept or direction or priorities from year to year, or at least when administration in Washington DC changes. And then there is the question of the relationship between Europe and the United States. And Trump started with America first, something that was existing before the Second World War. American committee that was against American engagements into European or global affairs, against any kind of alliances and security pacts and guarantees to the other countries. And now we are in the situation that Afghanistan at some point is uniting us. Probably in the future we'll be back. If the void will be filled probably by Russia or China, we don't know that. Mm-hmm. But definitely there's a geopolitical bout. Mm-hmm. And rivals can abuse this vacuum or emptiness of the Western presence. But definitely Europe has to beef up the capabilities, the possibility to be equal partner for the United States in the security cooperation. And then, as you said, like President Biden came in his office with some kind of a euphoria, which was a relief. Trump is out, and he doesn't have access to the nuclear codes probably now. And now they are in the hands of the Democratic President Biden, namely. But then he came out with really strongly voiced euphoria, saying, like at the Munich Security Conference, we will take care of all our allies from Rome to Riga. And it felt like he will fix all of our problems and unite Europe against common challenges for Europe, Russia, especially for Central Eastern Europe, but then also for the United States, China. But recently, the United States and the UK, leaving the European Union, and Australia, they came up with this AUKUS deal and the submarine procurement shift from France in favor of the Anglo-Saxon military industrial complex and for the alliance that actually separates Europe from France in relations with China. Mm-hmm. At the same time, Americans have always urged for Europe to be a part of this Chinese malicious influence containment. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on these? Like, practically, the Americans are doing something else, but vocally they are asking for the Europeans to be equal partners and look the same direction, use the same compass to address common challenges. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this coherence and also divergence at the same time?
I think it goes to show what a challenge China is, because it's different geography and it's a different range of challenges. It goes into obviously trade and investment and a big technology challenge is embedded here. I think so. It's challenging, and it has been challenging for NATO as an alliance, which since 2019 has decided we need to develop a China policy, and then they spent the better part of 2 years getting ready to deal with a China policy. So we still don't know what the China policy is. And NATO is not at the point where they they're ready to designate China as something, a challenge or a rival, or they're not there yet. So it's clearly challenging, and we see this also, as you say, in American policy, where very regrettably under the Trump presidency, President Trump tried to split NATO and the EU on these issues and punish the EU because he saw that as a trade adversary, and then enter bilateral deals with China. And then the EU started doing the same thing, and then we have division in operation. The Biden presidency promised to do things differently, but ended up doing sort of the same thing. And AUKUS is one example of this, really in a major way, offending France, and that obviously is detrimental to an Indo-Pacific policy, because France is, with Britain, one of the two countries that can really be there and underpin U.S. efforts. And I think the American administration has been, I think they have acknowledged that they did a misstep here, and they have been very present in Paris at a senior level since then to repair relations. So that's positive. But we see the challenge of developing coherent alliance policy. We see that not only on AUKUS but also on energy imports from Russia, where they wanted to punish the Nord Stream connection between Germany and Russia, but then they allowed it in the process of offending the Eastern European allies who were against it. There was the withdrawal from Kabul, which was uncoordinated, and so I think it goes for all allies that if the alliance, if NATO is to have a meaningful China policy, everyone needs to up their level of consultation, because without consultation we will be caught in the reasoning of individual capitals, and we will always then run into misunderstandings or mishaps, and then we will not get an effective China policy. And hopefully it can be done, but I think the signs are not overwhelmingly encouraging, and that there's work to be done. And I'm struck by what the Reflection Group, which was sort of a think group that through 2020 reflected on NATO state of affairs. They came out and said the one thing that the alliance really does need is a lot more consultation. And I think that events since then has validated that conclusion.
Thank you very much. That's a very good point. All your points and ideas are, I think, very valid and up to date, and it kind of triggered some of the ideas I have borrowed from the past. Michael Mandelbaum was really critical about the United States spoiling the relationship with major powers by defending the small ones. But then at some point, especially since 2014, he changed his opinion. He argued for the new containment, where even the small countries like the Baltic states are the acid test for the United States and the transatlantic European solidarity. So we cannot leave allies behind. We have to act as one, but we have to act for the sake of triple containment, to contain Iran in terms of the nuclear bomb, and to contain Russia, especially against Central Eastern Europe and former Soviet territories, and also China differently, like Belt and Road Initiative and communist interests overflowing Europe and Eurasia, which was characterized as a grand chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Do you think Europe and the United States, both, are they ready to take up the task? Are they unified, coherent enough, and capable enough, or we have already lost the fight against the ostensible adversaries, especially Russia and China?
I think the alliance, the Transatlantic Alliance, is not in a bad place. It has a lot of capital. There's a lot of willingness to make this work, and the way European security is set up is that it's founded on large NATO. The enlarged NATO that goes, from the Baltic states down to Romania, Bulgaria, and so forth. That's the foundation for European security, and that's also the foundation for European Union integration and cooperation. Political leaders, they realize this, and they realize that if we pull the rug on this one, who knows what will happen, and they're not going down that road. There's another big asset for NATO, which is Russia, and it is still a unifying factor. It may be a declining power, but it has a lot of disruptive potential in addition to its nuclear weapons and obvious military power as well. So that continues to be I would say, the main concern when we do a threat analysis for NATO. It's Russia, and I take note of how strongly Britain has reacted to some of the Russian actions and is seeking to rally the alliance behind it, even in the day and age of Brexit. So there's capital for renewed investment in NATO. But I totally follow you on the difficulty of managing new threats, new risks. Iran, I think they'll continue to see not eye to eye on Iran. I don't think President Biden will be able to roll back sanctions. So I don't think the United States will get back into JCPOA. So they will have to be creative. And on China, as we talked about, this is challenging NATO, and it will be an issue for the EU and the US, and that's going to be new because their trade and foreign direct investment talks and their technology investment coordination will involve the EU and the US, and that's going to have very distinct security implications. That type of security consultation is new to the partners, the allies, and but given what I think they had as capital, I think they will be able to pull through on that. But it probably won't always be very pretty.
Thank you very much. I think it's like I was thinking about the last and the next question. And I was thinking, like, are you reading my mind or what? Because you touched upon technology, innovation, and capacity and capabilities. And Russia, for example, declining power, descending power, I wouldn't like to see Russia failing because it will be a disaster for Europe. We would always love to see Russia benevolent and cooperative in Europe. And then we can basically place also, especially the Central Eastern Europe, on the same stance because it doesn't really depend on us. We cannot change Russia, the small Baltic states. What can they do to change the foreign and security policy of the Russian Federation? Nothing. But then when it comes to research and innovation, Russia has ostensibly stated that they want to build this Eurasia Union with China. And China has invested a lot in technology, artificial intelligence. In Russia, there are superb cybersecurity experts. And really, we are talking about new novel warfare, hybrid challenges, and other security challenges for us, for Europeans and Americans. Do you think we are equal partner, or China is already leading the technological game? Have we already lost?
I don't think we have lost at all. I think we tend to be impressed by China, as we rightly should be. But as we become impressed by China, I think, tend to underestimate the level of technological innovation that our economies possess. And I take note of the fact that the U.S. Congress is ahead of Europe in its desire to reinvest in basic research and thus re-energizing the economy for new technological leaps, because this will define the frontier of the competition with China. And I think we Europeans have a bit of work cut out for us there, because the way we set up basic research funds in the EU, we challenge money into it, but we tend to want these days, we want it to be very applied. So it should lead to growth and employment tomorrow. But that's not how you do basic research, and certainly not if you want to compete with someone like China. So we need to reorient ourselves towards more basic research in Europe. Also because we don't have the same scale of economy as the United States, and we see this, the big tech companies, they're American. And we want to think about how we in Europe gain voice to our own economic interests and layer that into a transatlantic relationship. The danger for the relationship is that Europe does not succeed in this, because then it becomes an imbalanced relationship between the US and Europe, pregnant with a lot of frustrations, and then it won't work. And so there's a definite common interest in going back to investing in and moving the technology frontier together. I think that's going to be key to the alliance as we move forward.
Thank you very much, and I think ending with this good positive note that Europe has to reorganize itself, learn something from Congress, and Congress can learn something beneficial from Europeans too. Therefore, we can cooperate and move ahead to meet the challenges of tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We were together with Professor Sten Rynning from University of South Denmark, and also Senior Fellow at the Danish Institute for Advanced Studies. Thank you very much, Sten.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.